Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Talk Soccer to Me podcast, an American fan's perspective on everything that I want to talk about around the world of soccer. The show is hosted by yours truly, Jack Auld, and recording live from the great city of Baltimore, Maryland. I believe it is December 4th. It's a Thursday, one day late. I do apologize. This is the first episode back after the international break. I took a bit of a break myself, so this is the first episode back in a while. I'm going to start this episode with a rant. We are getting to the time of year where it is hard for a weekly soccer podcast to keep up with everything going on. I know by the time anyone's listening to this, there will have been another round of Premier League midweek games that we're not talking about in this episode, and there may be another round of Premier League weekend games, depending when you get around to the podcast. I'm trying my hardest to keep up, but that kind of brings me to one of my main gripes with a lot of coverage in this busy time of season is the ups and downs of teams in this heavily fixtured month and how reactive everyone is towards that. Because I'm going to use Chelsea as an example. Chelsea had some good results that we're going to talk about later in this podcast episode. And then since the recording, there has been games and there have been negative results. And I'm not going to get around to them until next week's episode. But staying on social media and the reactions, it's just crazy how quickly everyone can go from, oh my God, this is a great Chelsea team, they're going to challenge for the title, to being fickle with their beliefs and being like, oh, this Chelsea team is terrible, they're worthless, yada yada, they're not going to compete for anything, their title charge lasted 4 days. And yes, I know a lot of that is trolling. But that's not very far off from like mainstream soccer opinions. And it's just the way we talk about teams and their ups and downs is ridiculous. Arsenal's another example. A few weeks ago, Arsenal are top of the world. They're winning game after game after game. They're not letting any goals in. People are talking about, oh, could this be the year? Could they beat Chelsea's defensive record from, I think, 2004 where they only let in 15 goals? And then they draw to a red-hot Sunderland team away from home. And all of a sudden, it's like bottlers. They can't do it. They're a poor team. I mean, this is coming from like legit soccer journalists. And again, I use the word fickleness, the way we talk about these teams, and that the most recent result is the defining opinion of a team, and that's just not true. A team can still lose a game and be a decent team that's in for a title charge, that's progressing in a positive direction. And that's, right now where there's these gluttony of fixtures and guys get hurt and guys get tired, it's more of just like survive and advance. It's a gauntlet, especially in the Premier League. So one team can look great one week and they can look poor the other. And I just feel like that sets up an environment for a just plethora of overreactions. And it's either the greatest team in the world or the worst team in the world, when like 99% of the time it's so obviously something in between. It was a little bit of ranting and an interesting way to jump right into the podcast. Sorry about that. But that's just kind of like the dilemma and the frustration that I'm feeling. And I feel like I feel it every year. Oh God. And then you get into social media like Reddit and TikTok, and you just try to follow opinions on these teams, and the trolls come out. That's what I go for here. Level-headed reasonableness. How's the team doing? Last 10 matches, last 5 matches, last 15 matches. How do they look in the table? Are they a good spell? Are they a bad spell? And I feel like I'm really just repeating what I just said, and I've probably added a few unnecessary minutes to this podcast, to this tangent, when there's like 22 games to talk about. But we're going to get there. We're going to go over the Champions League. It was match week 5, so we're getting to the latter half of the Champions League phase. And then we're going to talk about the weekend Premier League games, and just to give everyone a sense of time, we're going to talk about the games that were like immediately following the American Thanksgiving holidays. So that would be the Saturday, Sunday games that were on the 29th and the 30th. And after the Premier League, we're going to quickly hit the rest of the leagues around Europe. I know I got one match in the French League I really want to talk about. And then I'm actually going to break from the usual broadcasting, and I'm going to talk a little MLS. I know it's not something I usually do, and I find it like a little harder to keep up compared to like the structure of major European leagues, and the fact that I really don't have a hometown MLS team. But yeah, they're in the playoffs, and there's like kind of some cool scenarios going into the MLS Cup final. So we're going to talk about that later on in the episode, probably in about an hour or so. And if anyone's listening for the first time, because I've myself been like mass marketing this podcast to people, I just kind of want to express what this show, like what it comes from, and like what I want it to be. And a lot of it's what I was looking for as a soccer fan, and feeling as though like I couldn't get, and whether like domestic soccer coverage or like abroad in Europe, and a lot of the soccer media that like I was consuming was just kind of a mess. There's like a few things, like there's a hyperfixation on hypotheticals. Like I'm sick and tired of hearing like best 11s, who's the best right back in Premier League. I don't know. I don't think, I don't think it's productive. Like, why are we going to sit here compare Urian Timber and Reece James? Like, I just want to hear how both of them did over the weekend. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the minority, But, and then I think another thing that drives me crazy is this, like, glorification of the past. Like, constant, like, greatest Premier League 11 of all time. And just talking about, like, the early 2010s, the 2000s, the 90s, and nostalgia, and putting former teams and players on a pedestal that nobody in the modern game will ever compare to. No one's as good as they used to be. And just these shocking hot takes. Hot takes. Every clip you see has got to be this grand, ridiculous hot take to just generate traction and views and clicks. And it's just so disingenuous. And it, like, will come from what should be reputable soccer media sources, especially, I feel like, in Britain. Now, there's great soccer coverage out there. It's possible to find it. You can consume your mind, but in, like, the podcasting world and just getting, like, a grasp of what's going on week in, week out in the Premier League, I haven't found it. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And, we'll keep it simple. I will introduce a game. I'm going to talk about a game. I'll have a reaction to the game. I try to do it with nuance. I try to do it with level-headedness and, like, a bias without a single team. Because that's another thing. The bias with some of these commentators is ridiculous. But I'm going to have an opinion. Of course, I'm human. But I'm just going to try to do it with just as much level-headedness as possible. That's the key. That's the word. That's the main word. That's your homework. Use level-headedness in a sentence and tell someone about this podcast. And it's not going to be some great tactical breakdown. I know Tifo and The Athletic do wonderful tactical breakdowns. But I'm talking about 20-plus games here every weekend. I'm just trying to give a little recap in my opinion. Before we get into the action, make sure to follow Talk Soccer to Me on all social media platforms. The main two ones that I interact with are Instagram and TikTok, as well as to like and review on whatever streaming platform you're currently using for your podcast. That goes a super long way too, with, like, popping up in search feeds and whatnot. The big three seem to be Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. That's where 90% of our listeners come in through. So like, comment, subscribe, share it, do whatever. I've been working on getting a Discord up and running. I just got to get some people to hop on the Discord. And if you don't like it, well, just give me another chance next week. And if you don't like it back-to-back episodes, well, what am I going to do? But I'm really excited. First episode back. Let's talk some soccer. Let's get into it. As I previously mentioned a minute ago, I need to get ads. I need to get ads to break up the podcast. Champions League Matchday 5. 9 games on Tuesday, 9 games on Wednesday. Plenty of good, really just excited, good games. We're going to talk about the Tuesday games first, then we'll move into the Wednesday games. We're doing them in the order of, like, the games that are relevant, and then of the relevant games that I'm going to talk about, we're going to do them in the order in which they were played. And the first one up, I'm going to be a little hypocritical as we talk about the first Champions League game, because I think it's inevitable to talk of this game without speaking on history, and that was Chelsea hosting Barcelona on Tuesday. I think any soccer fan is going to remember some of the classic Champions League battles, 2008, 2009, specifically both those years. Super controversial match in 2009, everyone knows about. So when I do see Chelsea versus Barcelona on, like, the ESPN app or just any score sheet, I'm flooded with, like, a wave of nostalgia. Just great games over the years. But it's 2025. I'm going to give respect to the players. I'm not going to be sitting here talking about, remember when it was Messi versus Drogba? Like, no, I'm still very much excited for this matchup. And what's really exciting to me is I feel as though this Chelsea team is improved from last year. And I actually don't think Barcelona has taken a step in the right direction compared to their team last year. I don't think they've taken a step down. I know they've had their fair share of injuries along the way. But with a Chelsea team that seems to be improving with Enzo Maresca, I was really excited in this matchup and what it could produce. We get into the game, Chelsea's lineup looked good. I mean, obviously they're missing Cole Palmer. He's a big part of it. But I think everyone outside of Palmer is who I would start for Chelsea. Barcelona looked decently strong as well. I think De Jong in the midfield, but I still think they're lacking a Gavi and a Pedri. But this is a good team regardless. I know Yamal was out for a couple games earlier in the fall. So seeing him back and healthy, just like as a neutral, I think is really good. As the game gets started, Chelsea, they thought they were going to get the lead early on. This is going to be kind of a recurrent theme. 3rd minute, there was a handball and a build-up from a short corner. Decent cross in, but Wesley Fofana handled the ball. I mean, it's a rough usage of words because it was unintentional, but you can't have a ball go off a hand in a build-up of the game. Barcelona had a really good chance early on the game to take a lead. I think it was like the 5th minute. Ferran Torres got a one-on-one with the goalkeeper. It led from a poor playing it out of the back by Chelsea, a turnover deep in their own possession. Torres got the opportunity and just couldn't do anything with it. Robert Sanchez, the Chelsea goalkeeper, wouldn't have been able to do anything there. It should have been a goal. And then Chelsea get another goal taken away, 21st minute. Enzo Fernandez was offsides on a decent free kick cross from Estevao. Actually, Fernandez wasn't offsides. It was a Chelsea player who flicked the ball on. I clearly missed that one in my notes, but on rewatch, realized that. And then in the 27th minute, Chelsea did finally get their breakthrough. It was a short corner routine, and then all of a sudden, played a little triangle. Marc Cucurella had plenty of space inside the box on the right side. He sends in a strong low cross. I believe Pedro Neto was the man who got the shot off. It was originally blocked by Barcelona defenders, though they kind of made a mess of it. They weren't able to clear it. And then Jules Kounde, who didn't know where the ball is, hit it with the back of his heel. It's just really unlucky there. It's really unfair to him. Like, his name's going to go on the spreadsheet or a score sheet. But what are you going to do? Somebody had to get the open goal. And then going into halftime, Barcelona would see their night get worse. Ronald Araujo, he received a second yellow card on just a stupid rash foul on Cucurella. Really poor decision and just setting his team up for failure, because now they're going to play second half, a man down in Stamford Bridge. And 50th minute, it looked like that was prophecy was coming true, but another Chelsea goal was ruled offsides. They ruled it, but it was ruled offsides. I mean, all the calls were correct. It was just unfortunate for Chelsea, though they would get their second goal. I know I was talking about all the ones that got taken back. They would get their second goal. It would not be called offsides or any other infraction. Estevao got the ball on the right side of the box. The youngster, Brazilian, looked like a Brazilian, dribbled through two Barcelona players in the box like it was nothing, and then a thumping finish that Szczesny, the Barcelona goalkeeper, just could not do anything about. I mean, it was an incredible goal by the young man. And Chelsea put the game away in the 73rd minute. Pedro Neto, with possession in the middle, passes it to Enzo Fernandez on the left wing. Liam Delap playing center forward, who came in as a substitute. He was in the middle. He was originally in an offsides position, but he corrected himself, put the ball square away from Fernandez to make it 3-0. That one was actually called offsides as well, but VAR fixed their mistake, realized it was a good goal. Final in this one, Chelsea 3, Barcelona 0. I gotta say, I walked away from this one incredibly impressed with Chelsea. I never doubted that they had a really good chance to win at home, and obviously they were aided by a red card. But to beat Barcelona in this capacity, I did not see this coming. 3-0 is a damn good result, and it easily could have been much worse. Could have been much worse. They got 3 goals, but they also had 3 goals called back that were just a few inches from not being infractions or offsides. And it was really just a statement game. Yeah, they're going to have their ups and downs as this team progresses, but they can hang with the big weights of Europe. Barcelona were a top 5 team in Europe for me last year. So to see them come to Stamford Bridge in this capacity and get whooped up, it's impressive. And certain Chelsea players were impressive. I thought Marc Cucurella was fantastic for Chelsea. I forgot Lamine Yamal was there for large parts of the game, and getting what should be an assist on that first goal, just a really strong cross and a great sense of positioning on that short corner. Yeah, it was an own goal, whatever. Estevao can take a bow. I mean, that's the closest thing we've seen to a breakthrough performance. I didn't really take the Club World Cup too seriously, so this is the first time in a big game where I've seen him look great. I mean, it's just nice. He's young, though, and there will be ups and downs in his development, but what a result. What a game. I mean, just dribbling through those 2 defenders on his goal was just awesome. And I really don't have anything positive to say about Barcelona. They really let Chelsea take control of the game. Chelsea controlled the tempo. Barcelona were undisciplined enough to get a red card, and there was just a severe lack of chances. It was just a really poor game from them. Wow, I've just talked about this game so much. But yeah, Barcelona are not looking great on the Champions League table right now. They're sitting 18th. 2 wins, 1 draw, 2 losses. They really got to turn things around. Chelsea obviously going to be fighting for one of those top 8 spots. They are currently sitting in 7th after this round of games. Next game up on Tuesday was Bodo Glimt hosting Juventus. Now, spoilers, I'm much more likely to talk about, in quotations, bigger teams. But if I'm mentioning someone from Norway, which Bodo Glimt is, hosting someone from Italy, well, I'll save you the suspense. This one turned out to be a closer game than maybe it should have been. Goals in this one. Quick shout out to Weston McKennie starting for Juventus. Always got to give love to our American guys. Bodo Glimt would start the scoring off in this one. 27th minute, corner kick flicked on perfectly, and Ole Diedrich Blumberg at the back post to put it away gave the host a shocking 1-0 lead. Juventus would have to wait to the second half to get it tied up. There was a bit of a kerfuffle in the box. Penalty call, would it be, wouldn't be, and then a cross in, a shot. Some people were standing around looking confused. Luis Openda wasn't. He was able to get away the finish easily. Tie the game up 1-1. Our guy Weston McKennie 59th minute would give Juventus the lead. It was a cross sent in by Fabio Moretti, and McKennie just towered over his defender to head it in the back of the net. But just because Juventus have a 2-1 lead does not mean this game was over. Bodo Glimt was tied up in the 87th minute. Bodo Glimt player was tackled at the top of the box by Juventus substitute Juan Cabal. Just an unnecessary tackle and way high on the shin. It's a penalty that's going to get called every time. And it was finished well by Sondre Brunstedt Fett. Tie the game up 2-2. However, Norwegian dreams would be crushed. 91st minute, Juventus is counterattacking a little 2-1-2. A shot in the box. Canadian striker Jonathan David was the first one to it. Just pure good striker instinct to put the goal away and win this one for Juventus. The final in this one was Bodo Glimt 2, Juventus 3. Bodo Glimt is an entertaining club to watch. They had a good run in the Europa League last year, ultimately losing to champions Tottenham in the semifinals. And they've played well in most of their Champions League fixtures. Yes, they have no wins, 2 draws, and 3 losses. But I'm not holding them to the standard I hold other teams because they're from Norway. They pushed Monaco. They pushed Juventus. They lost both games by 1. An impressive 2-2 draw at home against Tottenham. And they won't crack the top 24. But I think they can hang their heads high at the end of the season, hopefully pick up a win and collect a nice paycheck. Juventus, though, are an interesting team. I mean, first and foremost, I love seeing my guy, Weston McKennie, getting playing time, scoring a goal. But this took 5 games for Juventus to win a Champions League match this year. And it's good enough for top 24. I mean, they're sitting 22nd right now, but they need to figure it out. This does not look like a team that's going to contend for anything in Europe, and they look like they're going to do what they did last year and just lose in the playoff round. Next up, we have Manchester City hosting Bayer Leverkusen. And these are 2 teams that I think are suffering from differing identity crises. Manchester City, it feels like they're trying to figure out how not to just be the Erling Haaland team. And I think Guardiola is actually kind of struggling at that because I feel as though when Haaland is not firing on all cylinders, this team kind of falters, and sometimes heavily. And for Leverkusen, it's kind of a matter of a direction this club is heading. It's been 2 years now since their invincible Bundesliga season, and they basically have a different team and a different manager, and I don't know where the club's going to go from here. But in the short term, it's going to be to go to Manchester and try to win this Champions League game. Speaking of the game, Manchester City came into this one with a pretty heavily rotated lineup. I mean, no Haaland, no Foden, no Doku. Leverkusen came out in their usual 5-3-2 formation that they've been running for most of the year. And Bayer Leverkusen would actually start this game off with a goal. 23 minutes in, just no pressure from Manchester City as they took the ball down the field, crossed it into the box. And that's kind of where luck landed their way. Alejandro Grimaldo, the captain, first time finish, got his ball over the top. It landed to him first, put it in the corner past James Trafford, the Manchester City goalkeeper. Grimaldo, one of the 2 last survivors of the great team of 2 years ago. Again, really just solid finish and a surprising start. Really poor defending by Manchester City there. And yeah, the Citizens just couldn't get into the game in the first half. The only chance I think they really came away with in the dying moments of the half was Bayer Leverkusen. They lost the ball kind of deep in their own half. And Tijani Reinders, he had an opportunity, decent possession in the box, but his shot was ultimately right at Bayer Leverkusen goalkeeper Mark Flecken. And if you went into halftime thinking Pep was going to say something to motivate Manchester City players or come up with any sort of tactical tweak to give them an advantage, yeah, it just didn't happen. Leverkusen doubled their lead within 10 minutes at the start of the second half. Similar to the first goal, Bayer Leverkusen just moved the ball down the field without any serious pressure. Ball was sent to the left side where Alejandro Garmado, the captain again, was there. He passed it actually back to the center of the field. The cross came in and from the center of the field, and it was wonderfully headed in by pretty good center forward play from Patrick Schick. Again, Schick being the other survivor of that invincible team. And it's just a good play to get his head on it, shrug off his defender to get to the ball first. And then Manchester City would bring on the 3 players I mentioned in the beginning of this recap, trying to get a goal from somewhere. Haaland actually almost had it in the 70th minute. Got a through ball, tried to get around the goalkeeper, but Mark Flecken was able to deal with any situation. Really just good goalkeeping. And as you can imagine, City would spend a good majority of the rest of the game with possession, trying to find the goal, cut the lead in half. But Leverkusen held strong. There was a free kick in the 85th minute. Ryan Sherky, it was all right. Tried to go to the opposite side of the wall. It didn't require an amazing save from Fleck, and he was pretty on top of it. And the crowds just got emptier and emptier, much to the Rabble fans' joys and the unfortunate reputation that the Etihad has sometimes. And it was just not meant to be for Manchester City in this one. Final score, Manchester City 0, Bayer Leverkusen 2. I did not see that coming. Manchester City looked fantastic going into the international break. They had wins convincingly over the likes of Dortmund, Bournemouth, Liverpool. I mean, they came back, they lost to Newcastle, but for the life of me, I thought this would be a bounce-back game. I was not expecting that to turn into 2 losses in a row. Now, Pep Guardiola did say in his post-game interview, I made too many changes. And believe me, I am not more intelligent than Pep Guardiola when it comes to this sport. But it's a long season, and a team competing for 3 trophies, as I imagine is the expectation in the Manchester City boardroom, is you're going to have to play close to 60 games. You're going to have to rotate sometimes. And if Manchester City cannot put up a fight in the games they rotate, they're going to have serious problems. And I'm already of the opinion that if Erling Haaland has a bad game, this team will struggle to pull out wins. So if he's not even going to start Haaland, Pep's got to figure out somehow to win these games. And now with the fact that they lost, they're sitting outside the top 8, and that potentially means 2 more games tacked on to an already busy schedule. And as I was coming up with this opinion and talking about it, did they have to rotate all 3 of their main attackers? I mean, most of their goal production outside of maybe Ryan Sherky is coming from Haaland, without a doubt, Phil Foden, and Jeremy Doku. So to have all 3 guys out in the same game just seems really gutsy in hindsight. And I know, it's 2020, but what are they doing? And I got to give some love to Bayer Leverkusen. They fully deserve this win. They took everything Manchester City was willing to offer them, which was no pressure on either goals. A fantastic performance by Alejandro Grimaldo, a goal and a hockey assist. And Bayer Leverkusen didn't have the greatest starts to the Champions League campaign. So getting a win against one of the bigger teams is hopefully something they can use to move up the table, where they're currently sitting 17th. The last game to discuss in depth on the Tuesday slate of Champions League games was Marseille hosting Newcastle. 2 teams with just fantastic home support. One of the few games that actually makes me wish we still had the old Champions League group stage format, because I would have loved to have seen a return leg at St. James's Park. But actually, the old Champions League group stage was terrible format. Anyway, the reason I'm excited for this one is it's a Marseille team that just seems to be improving and becoming a contender in France again. And it's a Newcastle side that seems to only be able to get a result in Europe. So I was excited. Let's see what happens. American forward Tim Weah lining up as a right back for Marseille. I know he's pretty flexible on where you can start him, but this close to the World Cup, I would love to see him up front. Good striker. But getting the game started, 4th minute, Newcastle had a free kick. Had to be cleared off the line by Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, player with decent Premier League experience. But Newcastle would get their opening goal less than 2 minutes later. Midfielder Sandro Tonali, with a little bit of space in the box, played on by Joe Willock. His cross was slightly flicked by Anthony Gordon, kind of landing perfectly to be struck by Harvey Barnes, and struck it was. A fine finish into the right corner. No chance for the Marseille goalkeeper, Geronimo Rulli. Newcastle up 1-0 early. Both teams would exchange chances to end the first half. You could easily argue that both Sandro Tonali and Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang for Marseille should have scored for their respective teams more than once. Tonali had 2 really good shots on goal, and so did Aubameyang. Though Aubameyang would get his back though. He started the second half nicely right away after kickoff. 14 seconds into the second half, there was the through ball played. Newcastle goalkeeper Nick Pope tried to play sweeper keeper, and he failed. He set up Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang with a tough but doable empty net goal. It was a fine finish to make it 1-1. And Newcastle almost immediately responded, but Harvey Barnes was offsides, and that was correctly called just across the box, and he was right there. In less than 2 minutes after that, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang would get his second half double as a nice cross in by our American guy Tim Weah. Aubameyang looked much younger than his 36 years of age and put away the finish with class. A quintessential striker's finish, just getting ahead of his goalkeeper and just getting ahead of his defender and just whipping it past his goalkeeper with nothing they could do. And following, their 2-1 comeback, Marseille would have all the momentum immediately after that. It was kind of surprising they weren't able to make it 3-1. They had decent shots from Mason Greenwood and Igor Paixão that peppered the Newcastle net. And as you can imagine, down a goal, Newcastle would fight back. I think somewhere in the 70s minutes-wise, Joe Willock had an opportunity in front of goal to do something that was saved, and Anthony Elanga had a tight angle from the right side, but it was a good save by Geronimo Rulli. And yeah, it just was not meant to be for Newcastle. They weren't really able to get back into the game after going down 2-1. Didn't really have too much threat when they should be threatening towards the end of the game away from home. And in this game, final score: Marseille 2, Newcastle 1. Certain games I just want to be entertained. They don't need a grandiose storyline. They don't need to be teams I particularly care about. I just want 100 or so minutes of entertaining soccer, and for the most part, Marseille and Newcastle deliver that for me. Thank you. I mean, both halves started out entertainingly. Newcastle being the stronger team in the first half, Marseille being the stronger team in the second half. And for Newcastle, it was just really fantastic midfield play by Sandro Tonali. I mean, really showing the Premier League privilege of having a world-class midfielder on a non-top 6 team. Though I say non-top 6 with heavy quotations, as I think Newcastle have been better than Manchester United and Tottenham on and off the field in the last 2-3 years. And on top of Tonali, man, they got Bruno Guimaraes there in the midfield, though I don't think it was Guimaraes' strongest game. And they weren't better on the field today as a team. And then if you go somewhere as tough to play as Marseille, you got to win the game when you can. Newcastle had chances in that first half to kill them, put the game out of reach, make it a 2-3 goal lead, and they just didn't do that. And the fans in the south of France showed their worth, because when Marseille did go down 1-0, that place got behind that team. I mean, that was some of the best home support I've ever seen. And as the game went on, they just continued to get louder, just continued to be there for the team, and they were 12th man, if you will, on the field. And also, quick shout out, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. I mean, just a classic performance for the old man. He's been around as long as I can remember, and he's still able to terrorize teams with his speed. I mean, you get 36 years old, you expect guys to lose their legs a little bit, but he can still beat you on a through ball. And he bagged a Champions League double against a decent Newcastle defense. Impressive result. With this result, Marseille move up in the Champions League table to 21st, much needed win, while Newcastle falls out of the top 8 to 11th. So we're going to quickly get through the rest of the Tuesday games, just going to talk about them super quick. Benfica and Ajax playing in a battle of the bottom, both teams coming into this match with no wins, no draws, and 4 losses. Jose Mourinho's men in Benfica were able to pull out a 2-0 victory to get that one. Union Saint-Gilloise, the tricky Belgian side, went to Istanbul, went to Turkey, and defeated a good Galatasaray team 1-0. Fantastic result, in my opinion. Borussia Dortmund at home against Villarreal moved back into the top 8 with a pretty convincing 4-0 victory. Villarreal being the worst team from any of the top 5 leagues so far in this Champions League campaign. And yeah, we got 2 more. Napoli, 2-0 home victory against Qarabag. Qarabag been a tricky team as well so far this season. And then a disappointing result for Athletic Bilbao as they traveled to Prague to play Slavia Prague, and it was a 0-0 draw. First game on Wednesday going to be an exciting one. Arsenal hosting Bayern Munich. I got a text for the game that pound for pound, these were the 2 best teams in Europe coming into this game. And I fully agree with that. I thought it was a great description, and I was super excited for this one. There's plenty of history between these 2 teams, though. I would say it is incredibly one-sided. I can think of older Champions League round of 16 ties where Bayern just beat the brakes off of Arsenal towards the end of Arsene Wenger's career as manager. And as recently as 2 years ago, Arsenal's first return in the Champions League in a long time. They lost by 1 goal on aggregate to Bayern Munich in the quarterfinals. So really excited for this one, just kind of getting a measure of where both teams are at. Arsenal with some rotation going into the game. Miles Lewis-Skelly started at left back over Ricardo Calafiori. And then, of course, you got to shout out Mikel Merino as the makeshift striker with injuries to Arsenal's 3 center forwards. I know it's not quite rotation, but it's still worth mentioning. Bayern's lineup looked pretty strong, in my opinion. Harry Kane up front, just a danger. He's been having a record-breaking season, and he loves to score against Arsenal. Though as the game got started, I think it comes as a surprise to no one that the first goal was an Arsenal corner kick. This club has a reputation for set pieces, and it's justified. They're good at it. Bukayo Saka, whose deliveries are spectacular, sent one in the 20th minute. Jurriën Timber gets his head on it. Manuel Neuer should have done better in the Munich goal, and he really just made a mess of it. It was Timber who was challenging him, and it was poor goalkeeping. And just like that, at home, first real chance of the game, Arsenal's up 1-0. They had a chance to double it like a few minutes later as they played a wonderful 1-2 with Merino. I think he nutmegged somebody. And then he was on the left side. He was approaching a one-on-one with Neuer. He had Saka crashing down the right side. Didn't know what he wanted to do with it. It looked like he was both trying to shoot it and pass it to Saka. Didn't result in anything. But nearly, immediately after that, Bayern's got the ball. Joshua Kimmich playing or holding possession as a center back. Sends a long ball down the right side to Serge Gnabry, who just had a step on Miles Lewis-Skelly. Gnabry, first time to the youngster, Leonard Carl, 17 years old, crashing into the box. His first time finish was sweet, and Bayern tied the game up in the 31st minute. And Munich should have doubled their lead a few minutes later, but Josef Stanisic, the defensive midfielder, the right back, got caught up with some severe indecisiveness. He's got a 3-on-2. Should he shoot? Should he pass? Carl was kind of crashing towards that back post, and he held on to it too long, and his shot was just poor. We get into the second half. It's 1-1. It was a good game. Arsenal, what are they going to do? They took the lead. 69th minute. Pressing Bayern. Upamecano makes a bad pass, trying to play it out of the back for Bayern. Declan Rice intercepts it. 1-2 passes. Ricardo Calafiori is doing an overlap on the left side. His first time cross sees a crashing Noni Madueke. Perfect first time strike by the substitute. Regain the lead for Arsenal 2-1. And this game would be put to bed in the 77th minute as a little 1-2 with Martinelli in their own half, then sends them on a long ball. Martinelli's first touch went right past Neuer, who was really far out for a sweeper keeper. And just like that, Gabriel Martinelli was able to roll it into a wide open net to make it 3-1. The game was a formality from that point on, and Munich really weren't able to get back into it. Final one from London, Arsenal 3, Bayern Munich 1. I know there's a lot of time between now and when trophies are won, but for it being November, that's about as much of a statement win as Arsenal could produce in this point of the season. Bayern Munich hasn't lost a single game in the Champions League coming into this one, and they've been steamrolling opponents in Germany, so to resoundingly win 3-1 at home and just utterly control the second half was a really impressive performance, in my opinion, by Arsenal. And they fully deserved the fact that they're top of the Champions League table, only unbeaten team. They've put up some seriously impressive performances. This with a pretty sizable beatdown of Atletico Madrid a few weeks ago. And there's a scenario in the next round of games that they could qualify for the top 8 with 2 games to go, which I think would relieve pressure in a pretty thick match day fixture period for Arsenal, and maybe they could mix in some rotation. And I had a hard time picking out which Arsenal player I wanted to highlight for having a good game. I mean, you got Christian Mascara coming in, back up most of the season, having immense composure on that back line. Saka, good as usual. Declan Rice, good as usual. Eze, good as usual. I mean, these guys are just on a purple patch of form, and it's really fun to watch. On the flip side for Bayern, I think it was Manuel Neuer who had the game to forget. I mean, it was really poor goalkeeping on the corner kick. He was nowhere close to the ball while jumping. And then Martinelli's goal, I know Neuer popularized the sweeper keeper, so he should know when to do it and when not to do it. And that's just a really poor performance. I mean, Harry Kane, really nowhere to be found for most of the game for me. I'm impressed by the 17-year-old Leonard Carl, who just continues to put balls in the back of the net, put in good performances. And then some of the comments in the media by Joshua Kimmich on how Arsenal don't play as well as PSG and it's not real football. I'm not even going to look into it, but anytime you say something like that after a loss, it just sounds like sour grapes to me. Next up in the Wednesday games is Inter Milan traveling to the Spanish capital to play Atletico Madrid. Always interested in a match between these two. They run a lot of similar traits in my head, if that makes sense. I think both of these teams, defensive, strong abilities. I think both teams have always had players who I think are grossly underrated in just soccer media. And unfortunately, I do think of both these teams the fact that they've come up short in recent Champions League finals. American Johnny Cardoso finally back in the lineup for Atletico Madrid. I know he's been dealing with injury, but he's one of the most underrated American players in my opinion. And I always feel like I should be seeing him in World Cup 2026 starting 11 discussions, but he never is. Don't know why. But let's get the game going. Start of the game, there's 3 chances early on, all for Inter Milan. And in the first 10 minutes, you're like, okay, this is Milan's game to win. And in the 9th minute, against the run of play, decent build-up play by Atletico, just patient and effective. Broke down Inter's usually tough defense. They got a lucky bounce here or there. They're finally able to break through. The game kind of went crazy. There was a cross in from Simeone. It originally was called a handball because it hit Alex Baena before Julian Alvarez put it away. It was not a goal. VR looked at it for a while. And through all the madness, Atletico Madrid were winning 1-0. Going to skip over the rest of the first half because we got a lot of soccer to talk about today. Inter actually nearly scored right away in the second half. Nico Barella, near wonder goal. Wonderful touch, wonderful chip over the goalkeeper, but it hit the crossbar, wasn't meant to be. Inter would get their tying goal in the 54th minute. Piotr Zelensky played a nice 1-2 with Angio Bani on that sort of inside left channel, coaches would call it. And it was a pretty decent finish from Zelensky, first time into the bottom right corner. though Atletico would win it in the dying moments. 93rd minute, they win a corner, and the head of Jose Maria Jimenez gets on an Antoine Griezmann cross for a dramatic late-game winner. Final score, Atletico Madrid 2, Inter Milan 1. Yeah, I wouldn't say I had any crazy expectations going into this game. I think my first thought was that Atletico Madrid really needs a win, as they only had 2 from their first 4. And if, considering they were the home team, if it had finished 1-1 at the end of the 90 minutes, I think I'd have been very impressed with Inter's ability to kind of come back into this game, take a hold of the second half, and get their equalizer. But that's a hypothetical. That's not what happened. Atletico Madrid won this game. And honestly, didn't really feel like my opinion of either team was swayed either way. I was glad to see American midfielder Johnny Cardoso get a 60-minute shift in this game. It wasn't his greatest game, but it's just somewhere I would love seeing a potential starting American midfielder, in a Champions League game with significant importance. And yeah, no, I don't know. Maybe it's one of those, they are who we thought they were. I thought either team had a shot of winning it, and it just took a little bit at the end for Atletico to pull this out. And the win actually takes Atletico Madrid up to 12th in the standings, definitely within the sights of top 8, and Inter Milan with this loss, first one in the Champions League, fall to 4th. Next up's Liverpool hosting PSV Eindhoven. The Dutch team coming into this one on decent form in both the league and Europe, and Liverpool coming into this game on some sort of crisis mode. I don't know. They started out the season strong, but that might have been behind smoke and mirrors. This is actually taking them great efforts to win every game late. And lately, it's just been rough going for Liverpool. I mean, imagine telling someone 6 months ago that Arne Slot would be on the hot seat right now. So the real thought on this game is this going to be one that just adds to Liverpool's poor season, or are they going to, kind of right the ship and get an important European win at home? Quick shout out, American Serginho Dest starting as the right back for PSV. So again, we want to see how Liverpool would do, get the game started. Let's see how they do. I'm asking these questions rhetorically, of course, because the game started terribly. Virgil van Dijk decided to palm the ball like a volleyball player in the 6th minute while defending a corner. It was a clear penalty, really just confusing play by one of the best defenders of his generation. Ivan Perisic is the man taking the penalty for PSV. He may be old, but he is still a great player, and he is not missing that. And just like that, Liverpool are down 1-0 at home 10 minutes in. And then a few minutes later, 10 minutes later, actually to be exact, you thought, okay, Liverpool's going to right the ship. They're going to be all right. Gakpo takes a shot. They get a fortunate redirect from the keeper. Lands right at the feet of Dominic Szoboszlai. And just like that, it's tied up. You have to wonder if the PSV goalkeeper, Matej Kovar, could have done better, as it wasn't the greatest shot by Gakpo, and he just pushed it right back towards the front of the goal. PSV almost got a second in the 17th minute, but the free kick was offsides, or the flick on was off. Somebody was offsides, or maybe it was the guy who finished it. And then Van Dijk actually almost made up for his early mistake as he got on the good side of a Liverpool corner, kind of crashing in, but his header went off the top crossbar in the 34th minute. And the game went into halftime 1-1. 56th minute, PSV would make it 2-1. Mauro Jr., he was allowed a lot of his space in the midfield, is carrying the ball. Guus Til makes a run in from the right wing that is just not tracked good enough by Milos Kerkez, the summer signing for Liverpool, and Til's first time finish was really good. It was enough to get past Liverpool keeper Giorgio Mamardashvili, and to kind of steal what the announcer said in the game. As long as he didn't hit Mamardashvili, it was going to go in the net, and Liverpool are losing again just like that. 65th minute, Cody Gakpo really should have put a good cross away from Szoboszlai, over basically everyone in the PSV defense, but his header went over the bar. Szoboszlai actually had a good shot a few minutes before that. 72nd minute, against the run of play, PSV capitalized on a Liverpool mistake. Ibrahima Konate in the defense just completely whiffed on a ball. Should have been routinely cleared or touched or passed, and American substitute forward Ricardo Pepe comes on the field, jumps on the opportunity, takes the ball into the box, cuts on his right foot, hit the post with a shot that beat the Liverpool keeper, and his teammate Kuhaib Driouche was right there to put it in the empty net. Now Liverpool are down 3-1 at home to PSV Eindhoven. And as you'd expect, Liverpool pushed on. They pressed, they tried to score, but it wouldn't be them who got the next goal. Driouche would seal the game in the 91st minute, getting his second. Dest would make a run down the right side, a nice run. And when he crossed it back in, I think the Liverpool defenders were expecting it was going to go to Pepe. Instead, Driouche was there at the top of the box to hit a powerful shot in the bottom right corner. Final on this one, Liverpool 1, PSV Eindhoven 4. I simply could not understand what I was seeing when I watched this game. Yeah, Liverpool's had some trouble to start the season so far, but that was awful. And I don't want to take anything from PSV. When a team gives you opportunities, you're supposed to capitalize on them, and that's exactly what they did. But Liverpool gave PSV the first 3 goals, and they were all by their defenders. Van Dijk trying to get a rebound on a corner, Kirk says not marking his man, and Konate apparently not being able to kick a ball. Am I being harsh? Maybe. But Liverpool are not in any position to be making mistakes like this. This team is under pressure, your manager's under pressure, and the manager's defense let him down today. Don't get me wrong, there's attacking woes too. This team has issues going forward. It feels like Dominic Szoboszlai is the only player offering anything in the attacking third for Liverpool in the last few weeks. And despite all this, a horrific showing at Anfield, and I know there's been some games since this has been recorded, I'm not calling for Slot to be sacked. I don't think it would do Liverpool any good right now. It would have to be a scenario where they could poach a really good manager from a team, and I just don't see that being feasible. I also don't see Jurgen Klopp potentially coming back. But that's enough about Liverpool. They lost today, and it was a good day for the US of A. Serginho Dest putting in a strong performance at right back, and Ricardo Pepe coming off the bench and being influential in the 2 final goals for PSV. These are 2 guys that I can say I have high hopes for. They'll make an impact in next summer's World Cup. So seeing them get a good game in this manner in the Champions League, I love to see that. And with this result, Liverpool are currently sitting 13th in the Champions League table, while PSV are right behind them in 15th. Next, we got Olympiacos hosting Real Madrid from the Athens suburbs. It's one of those games that if I mention it and we're giving it some attention when I had no expectations of the game itself, that means something happens. Sorry to be a bit of a spoiler, but typically Olympiacos versus Real Madrid is not a game I would give any attention to, and we're going to give attention to this game. There are 7 goals that I'm going to talk about from this game. And 7 goals in a game like this, I don't really have time to talk about anything else. 8 minutes in, Olympiacos surprised me. A good tackle on Mbappe from the top of the starting circle, then some good tiki-taka-like play, and a wonderful shot from outside of the box by Chiquinho has Olympiacos up 1-0. And then it turned into the Mbappe show. First in the 22nd minute, a good run behind the defense. He can't be caught. Got a good pass from Vinny Jr., finishes the 1-1. And then he got a second in the 24th minute. A cross coming in from the right side by Arda Güler is finished by a soaring Mbappe, a strong header right outside the 6-yard box. And then he got his third in the 29th minute, another well-timed run and a good pass from Chouameni in the midfield. Olympiacos players, including the goalkeeper, wrongly assumed offsides and just kind of gave up on the play, and Mbappe finished the 1-1. Olympiacos wouldn't give up, though. The former Interman Mehdi Taremi hit a nice header, unmarked in the box, to make it 3-2 in the 52nd minute. Mbappe would get his 4th in the 59th minute, another assist from Vinny. Olympiacos would make it hairy in the end with a goal from Ayoub El Khabi, another unmarked header in the box to make it 4-3. But that was it. The final score in this one, Olympiacos 3, Real Madrid 4. And I'm actually going to talk about other things before we get into the take. I pick games and I choose some to be talked about more, some to be talked about less, some not to be talked about at all. And I think I incorrectly picked this game on the lower amounts of talked about less, because I've blown over my total time allocated to this game. And also, I've noticed I get quieter as the podcast goes on, and if you had to turn it up at all, I apologize. I don't know why I do that, but yeah, I should have definitely given this game more love before I decided to do this, because I could have talked about so much more. I left out so much, and I apologize about that. But let's get to the take. Let's do the take. The game had 2 talking points, 2 things to walk away from. One was Kylian Mbappe's excellence, and the second was Real Madrid's inability to defend crosses in the middle of the box. But I'm going to talk about Mbappe first. He had an idea in his head, I imagine, before the game of exposing Olympiacos' back line when they would try to do offsides traps. He was going to use his speed, and it worked. He got behind the defense several times, especially when the game looked hairy. Olympiacos went up 1-0. Mbappe scores 3 goals. Olympiacos makes it 3-2. Mbappe scores a 4th goal. And hey, it's 4 goals to add his Champions League total. He's definitely going to be happy about that. I would say he's been the bright star of a Real Madrid start to the season that may not be up to their incredibly high standards. But yeah, he's just fantastic. And Real Madrid, they allowed 2 goals towards the end of the game. This is the other talking point. And those goals were they were good goals, but it was really poor by Madrid. And they were identical. It was a well-whipped-in cross and just a lack of marking right in front of the goal to allow wide open headers. Now, El Khabi and Taremi, the guys who scored those goals, are better than I think most people realize. Like, they have a lot of experience. El Khabi was important in that Conference League victory from Olympiacos a couple years ago. And Taremi's always been more of an underrated striker as he gets to the twilight of his career. But that almost cost Real Madrid today. And Yeah, you need to work on that. That'll be a little training ground exercise, defending crosses in front of the box. But with this result, Real Madrid are fifth in the table, looking good, while they cannot say the same for their Greek adversaries as Olympiacos are 33rd. The final game in the Champions League that is going to get our love and attention and in-depth coverage is Tottenham versus PSG. Tottenham's actually traveling to the French capital for this one, and I really didn't know what to make of this game beforehand. Tottenham got their ass whooped against Arsenal before this, so I've maybe thought my expectations would be low, but Tottenham also looked really good against PSG in the Super Cup at the beginning of or at the end of the summer when I had no expectations. So who knows? It's Tottenham, you never know what you're going to get from them. I'm going to spoil it. This game was high scoring, and it was high scoring enough to where I'm going to miss some information. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. There's going to be good stuff that got left out because goals are just going to take up all my time when I talk about this. And in the 35th minute, the goal scoring started, and it was Tottenham who's going to lead us into this Thanksgiving meal of goals. Yeah, I didn't see Tottenham scoring first coming either. But some decent play on the left side. Sees a cross go in. It goes in across the face of goal. Across goes in, across. Say that 3 times fast. Randall Colomowani, the former PSG striker, was able to send it back across the other face of goal, and who's there at the back post to put it away? Richarlison. Just like that, Tottenham's up 1-0. They thought they would take the lead in the halftime, but after some extended possession, PSG won a corner in the 45th minute and shot from outside of the box from Vitinha. Just incredible. The corner led. There was some quick passing, Kavicha and some other players, and it lands with Vitinha, and it was an incredible shot. Top bins, bar down. It seemed like a bit of a quick routine, but it was one of the best shots I've seen in a minute. So I implore you to look it up. And then coming out at halftime, Spurs would actually be the first one to get out of the break there too. 50th minute, they get a corner of their own. Richarlison was at the back post. He sends it back across the face of goal. Archie Gray has a shot. It's cleared off the line. It lands to Colomowani, but it doesn't land perfectly. He has to volley it out of the air, and he puts it away. Tottenham are up 2-1. They regain the lead. PSG would not allow Tottenham to have the lead for long, though. It's less than 3 minutes later. Vitinha gets his second. Another shot from outside the box, or let's say more top of the box. Puts it on the left foot. He curls it around some defenders. There's nothing Vicario, the Tottenham goalkeeper, could do. And then PSV would finally take the lead in this game. Tottenham make an absolute mess out of it, playing out of the back. Colomowani was set up for failure with a bad pass, and Fabian Ruiz will not have an easier attempt in his life as he put it away to make it 3-2 to PSG in the 59th minute. And then PSG would increase their lead in the 65th minute. A corner was sent in kind of low. It should have been cleared. It was poorly defended by Tottenham. I think all the bounces just went PSG's way. And yeah, Willian Pacho was in the right place at the right time in the box to put it away, make it 4-2. And yeah, Spurs would make it interesting though. I mean, they didn't give up. 72nd minute, Vitinha, who's having the best game on the pitch, poorly gave the ball away. Colomowani made it 4-3. PSG would win a penalty in the 75th minute from a handball. And Vitinha would get his hat trick. Final score, PSG 5, Tottenham 3. And breathe. Some games you don't know what to make from it. If you'd have told me prior to this round of Champions League fixtures that PSG would beat Tottenham at home by 2, I wouldn't be surprised. I'd expect that. PSG are the reigning European champions, and Spurs just got their ass kicked by Arsenal in the most recent round of games. So that makes sense. But the nature of how this game happened is really what's leading me to struggle to produce a take because Tottenham went up in this game twice, and that's strange. Tottenham were the better team in the first half. That's strange. And both players who got more than one goal gave away possession that caused another goal against their own team. That's strange. It was a weird game. The game felt weird the whole time. It was like the freaking Twilight Zone. And yeah, it ended up with being a normal result, PSG winning by 2. But how do I produce a take here? It finished 5-3. What should I think about walking away from this game? Maybe there isn't anything to take away from this game. And honestly, PSG looked really poor defending set pieces. You get into some late Champions League knockout ties at the end of the season against Bayern Munich, Arsenal, Chelsea, teams that are strong and physical. You could pay for that. They need to figure that one out. But their attack is just so wonderful, man. The fluidity, it just always seems like they're going to score. There's always a player cutting in, dancing around a defender, passing well. They can do it all. And they've been doing it all this season without the most recent Ballon d'Or winner, Ousmane Dembele. I don't know. I still haven't gotten a grasp on this Thomas Frank Tottenham team, and I think that's valid because it takes a while for a manager's identity to really sink in with a team. So I guess my jury's still out on them. PSG are sitting second in the Champions League after this win, though. Tottenham fall to 16th. All right, it's time to speed run the rest of the Wednesday Champions League fixtures that we did not talk about.
Early round games, FC Copenhagen defeated Kairat Almaty from Kazakhstan 3-2. Good result from Copenhagen as they've pulled 4 points so far in their Champions League campaign. AS Monaco is definitely going to be disappointed as they travel to Cyprus and were only able to get a 2-2 draw against Paphos. A game that I probably should have talked about, but I didn't. Atalanta defeated Eintracht Frankfurt 3-0 in Germany. Frankfurt kind of disappointing me so far in this Champions League campaign. And the final game I did not talk about was Sporting Lisbon with a pretty resounding 3-0 victory over Club Brugge from Belgium. Now we're going to move on to the Thursday games. That would be the Europa League and the Conference League. Now how I do it is I'm going to talk about 2 Europa League games and 1 Conference League game. I know they have 18 as well as the Champions League, and they're quite entertaining competitions, and they give you an opportunity to watch matches you typically wouldn't watch, but I don't have the time to talk about all of them. So the first of the 2 Europa League matches that I wanted to fix on, get one English team, and one of the matchups was Aston Villa versus Young Boys out of Switzerland. So if we get into this Aston Villa Young Boys match, it almost started off with a banger in the 3rd minute. Daniel Malin, wonderful strike to get us started out, but it pulled a good save from the Young Boys keeper, Marvin Keller. It was all Villa in early parts of the game, and then that was capped off in the 27th minute when Daniel Malin finally got his breakthrough. It was a wonderful floated cross into the box from Yuri Tillemans, landed perfectly towards a leaping Daniel Malin, whose header finds the inside of the right post. Malin would then get his second in the 42nd minute. Villa just carved through Young Boys' defense. Malin dribbles past his defender to make it 2-1. Aston Villa are 2-0 up going into halftime while running at half speed mainly. It was very one-sided. And Villa, just like the first half, came out in the second half the better team. Malin would have thought to get his hat trick, but put the ball in the back of the net, but Morgan Rogers was offsides in the build-up to his goal. Young Boys actually ran into the same scenario in the 69th minute where they thought they put the ball in the back of the net, but there was an offsides call in the build-up. Young Boys would then get one back as substitute Joel Montero, who had a decent night off the bench, got behind his defender on a long ball, stayed onside, finished it finally past Emi Martinez. It would not be enough though. Final score in this Europa League match, Aston Villa 2, Young Boys 1. I mean, for Aston Villa, that's all you want out of a European night. It was a mainly stress-free game where you're not running 100%. You're not going to tire yourself out before the weekend. Villa looked leagues above Young Boys throughout most of the game. And I think there was a little laziness on their attacking and a little more effort. They could have made this one 4, 5, 6-0, honestly, before Young Boys finally got their goal to make it look better on paper than it actually was. And reading about this game, there were some rumblings of Young Boys fans not behaving in their corner of the stadium. I definitely saw some objects thrown at Daniel Malin when he scored, which was a good game by him. I don't think they were showing the fan misbehavior on the Golasso show where I take in all my Europa League action, but nobody wants to see that. I wouldn't have pegged a Swiss team to be the source of trouble. But yeah, overall, I mean, that was just a good win for a Villa team. I think this team definitely sees the Europa League as an attainable trophy this year. I don't see why not. They have the talent. They have the roster. They're enjoying a good season in the Premier League, so it makes sense that they're towards the top of the Europa League table. The other game I chose to cover in the Europa League was Celtic traveling to Feyenoord. Just 2 teams from that, second level of European leagues that both desperately need wins in this competition after pretty so-so starts, where I would have thought they would have done better. Also, final match for Celtic interim manager Martin O'Neill, who's seen a lot of success with the club over the years. You got the American Austin Trusty starting in defense for Celtic. Also worth shouting out, Robin Van Persie is the Feyenoord coach, and Feyenoord would get us started off. Through ball through the center of the Celtic defense landed with captain Sam Stein, who smartly passed it to Ayase Ueda, whose first time finish was right inside of the post. And Celtic were desperate to settle this game down. Feyenoord had several chances before and after this goal, and Celtic's nerves would be settled in the 30th minute. Reo Hatate made a smart run down the right. His looping cross was put away by Yang Hoon-jan at the back post to tie it up. Hatate would then get his goal to end the first half. Feyenoord poorly gave it away. Celtic's press just really kept pressuring them, and the Feyenoord keeper Timon Wellenreuther gave it away, and it doubled Celtic's goal tally going into halftime. There were a few Feyenoord corners around the 72nd minute that pressured Celtic. It was like, I think, a string of 3 of them, and it was the only real decent Feyenoord chances in the second half. It resulted in several blocked shots, one potential handball shout, and a header that hit the crossbar, but ultimately it did not result in the tying goal for Feyenoord. Celtic would put the game away in the 82nd minute as Benjamin Nygren put away a thumping finish after some nice passing around the box. Final score, Feyenoord 1, Celtic 3. I was expecting both Celtic and Feyenoord to be a little higher up on this Europa League table. I mean, both teams were desperate for a win to get into the top 24, and ultimately it proved to be Celtic's day. And hopefully they can use this big win to springboard their season. They've been up and down in the Scottish League. They're not sitting in first, and it's not Rangers ahead of them, it's Hearts. They've been up and down so far in this Europa League season, and I think this is below their usual expectations. I mean, they've sacked a manager, brought in an interim, and hopefully they'll find their guys soon. And at first I was going to criticize Feyenoord for their poor Europa League start, and then I debated it because I was like, their schedule has been difficult. Aston Villa and Stuttgart are going to be tough games where I actually wouldn't expect Feyenoord to get a result. But to lose this one hurts because you're expected to get a result at home. They lost away at Braga where they probably should have done better. And they've got one win besides that. They're 3 points out of the top 24, and they've got some decent, some difficult games in their final three. But yeah, ultimately, just a poor Europa League start and for Feyenoord. So let's run through some other Europa League matches real quick. Roma at home defeated Midtjylland of Denmark. Midtjylland hadn't actually lost in the Europa League so far this season. Porto hosted Nice out of France, dominant 3-0 victory. Lille, one of the teams I think should do well in this competition, defeated Dinamo Zagreb 4-0 at home. And Bologna, an Italian team, don't know how they're going to do, but they got the best of RB Salzburg 4-1 at home. Stuttgart traveled to go-ahead Eagles in the Netherlands and pulled out a 4-0 victory. Lyon got a nice 6-0 victory. Nottingham Forest beat the brakes out of Malmo 3-0 at home. And yeah, Rangers drew Braga 1-1. So right now I know the English teams in the table. Nottingham Forest is sitting in 16th, but the start of their season was just absolutely tragic. Aston Villa sitting third. You got Lyon at the top, Real Betis in the top 5, Porto in the top 10. It's going to be a really interesting competition once it gets down to like the quarterfinals and semifinals, because I was really surprised when Tottenham and Manchester United advanced the way they did despite their poor English league form last season. I think Aston Villa has the chance to be like one of those inevitable English teams, but Nottingham Forest, I'm not so sure about. So it kind of opens the door. And again, you got Roma. They're going to be tricky. Lyon, Porto. I mean, Lyon, Porto, and Roma should probably be in the Champions League. So it's definitely going to be exciting. But we're going to move to the Conference League. I only decided to pick out one game in the Conference League, and I think I made a good choice. I decided to do Strasbourg versus Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace obviously having a decent season. I'd say more domestically than abroad. Conference League doesn't play as many games. They play 6 instead of the 8 in their league phase. But Strasbourg is doing well in France, and they have that connection with Chelsea. So there's some good players in that Strasbourg team, such as Ben Chilwell, who started a Champions League final and won it. So we're going to get into that game and then quickly run over to all the Premier League games. Again, if you made it this far, because I think this will probably be close to the halfway point, this might turn out to be one of the longest episodes in this show's short history. I want to thank you and appreciate you, and make sure to follow Talk Soccer to Me on all social media platforms. Try to regain my focus this late into the episode. So yeah, let's get into the Strasbourg Crystal Palace game. Jean-Philippe Mateta would try to get us started with something interesting in this game. He tried a cheeky chip over the keeper in the 6th minute, but it wasn't meant to be. Though it was Strasbourg who applied all the pressure in the first few minutes. 2 decent opportunities for them in the first 15 minutes. And then against the run of play in the 35th minute, Crystal Palace would actually open the scoring. A long ball forward to Jean-Philippe Mateta, who held the ball up well. He then set up Tyrick Mitchell on the left wing, and his tight angle finish was good into the far right corner. Again, really just against the run of play, but it was some great center forward play, great assist, and a fine finish. And Palace should have made it 2-0. But Ismail Assar missed a wide open goal from 25 yards. His boot to get it in there just had a little too much curl on it and it hit the post. Strasbourg would then get their equalizer 7 minutes into the second half. It was really good team play, progressing the ball through the middle of the field. And then it got out to the left wing back, Diego Moreira, whose cross is finished first time by the captain, Emmanuel Omega. And yeah, tied game up, you can make the argument, Strasbourg should have scored earlier, but Crystal Palace with that empty net opportunity. It was like, what are they doing? And then after that, Crystal Palace would miss their second open net opportunity. Adam Wharton. This one was even more egregious than the first. He missed an open goal off the top crossbar from 18 yards out, where he had, I think, more time than he realized. with these missed chances by Crystal Palace, Strasbourg will get their winner in the 77th minute. Free kick gets past Dean Henderson, but it hits the post. Samir El Morabet, the Strasbourg midfielder, is the first person to the ball. He puts it away. He was onside. And the final in this one was Strasbourg 2, Crystal Palace 1. I can tell you what Crystal Palace practiced after this Conference League matchup, and that was finishing. Because that performance out there was some of the worst finishing I've ever seen. I try not to be overly negative, but Crystal Palace had 2 wide open goal opportunities that they just straight up missed and hit the crossbar. And they had several one-on-ones with the Strasbourg goalkeeper that should have been put away. And frankly, I think it's indicative of their entire Conference League performance so far. Shockingly, below par. It doesn't make any sense. And I think that Crystal Palace team that we've seen in the Premier League looks head and shoulders above the Crystal Palace team that we've seen in the Conference League. I know the sample sizes are wildly different, but this doesn't make any sense. Palace should be doing better than sitting on 6 points through 4 games. And I mean, it was a good result by Chelsea's cousins over there in France. Strasbourg have definitely been one of the better stories out of that country, you know, performing well in the league. And now they're sitting towards the top of the Conference League table. I mean, hell, they're ahead of every team but one in second. I mean, hell, the team at the top is Samsunspor out of Turkey. I don't think many of you have probably heard of Samsunspor. And then the next best team is NK Kelj. I believe they're out of somewhere Eastern Europe, like Serbia, Slovenia. And then you've got Shakhtar Donetsk at 4, the reputable Ukrainian side. You know, but they're also dealing with a war. Mainz is 5th. There's some big team, big league representation. You know, Rayo Vallecano out of Spain sitting down there at 12th. Fiorentina's in 17th. Crystal Palace is in 18th. Yes, some shocking results. And you got Lincoln Red Imps out of Gibraltar, who are sitting in 26, like within the realm of a playoff spot. It's a weird competition, and I like that there isn't really a thought of one of the bigger league teams that are going to pull away. But that's it for Europe. We're done with Europe. An hour in, we're finally getting to some of the weekend games. The coverage is not going to be as extensive as, you know, some others, but we're going to get there. And I do apologize if there's any audio issues. This kind of happens when I get to like around the hour mark. Is it just says the podcast is getting quieter, like the output, like the recording output is getting quieter, and it's like it's set to the same recording settings, and it's the same distance from my face the entire time. So I don't know. I feel like I'm as loud as I was in the beginning, but from what I'm reading right now, if you're here and you've had to turn the volume up 1 or 2 times, oh, I'm sorry about that. But we're finally going to get in the Premier League. We're getting in the Premier League. And yes, there's a good chance that maybe 1 or 2 Premier League games have happened since you listen to this. But just bear with me, because there were still some really, really entertaining games to talk about. With the Premier League, we're just going to go in order of which they happened. And we got a non-top 6 matchup in our first one. We've got Brentford versus Burnley. I mean, how else would you want to spend your Saturday morning than watching Brentford hosting Burnley? And you may think I'm joking, but I'm not. That's got potential for an exciting matchup. Brentford are good going forward. One of the better Premier League sides at it. And Burnley are scrappy. Yeah, they're sitting in the relegation spots, or they may be as of recording. But they don't look as weak as previously promoted teams, and I think they might be able to give the fight. I think they'll probably get relegated, but they'll be able to give the fight. So we'll see how they do today. Brentford with a few early first half chances. There was a decent shot from Mikel Damsgaard right away. And then, Burnley got a yellow card for diving in the box in the 15th minute. And honestly, I can't really say I was impressed with either team's first half chances. It was quite a boring first half, actually. And then Brentford almost got the second half started out with some theatrics, but they had a goal ruled offsides. And, spoiler, you had to wait to the end of the game for this one to ramp up. 79th minute, there was a collision between 3 players in the box, 2 Brentford and 1 Burnley. Brentford on, being the attacking team. And there was a penalty ruled in Brentford's favor. It's pretty 50-50, but I guess it was the right call. And it was calmly put away by Igor Thiago. And then nearly immediately after that, Burnley got a penalty of their own. Brentford defender Michael Coyote, he poorly lost possession, had the ball land at his feet in the box, just kind of sat there on it too long. And then a Burnley player comes in, tries to steal it from him. He trips him while trying to clear it. Zion Fleming calmly finished his penalty as well to tie this game up. And then immediately after this goal, Brentford scored again. Jordan Henderson sent in a whipping cross, like almost
right after the kickoff, it bounced around. Kyle Walker kind of made a mess of it, and it landed perfectly for Igor Thiago, who thumped it in the goal. And Brentford put the game away in the 92nd minute. A counter capped off with a nice finish by Dango Ouattara. Final in this one, Brentford 3, Burnley 1. Sometimes good things come to people who wait, and that's literally anyone who watched this match. Yeah, you got 4 goals, but it took you 80 minutes to get there. It was just such a cagey affair in the beginning. Like, no one could really get anything going. Both teams really just not trying to give up that first goal. But when it broke through, boy, it broke through. And you got to give credit to Brentford. You know, they've got a good, strong home form going this year, and they just keep that going. Burnley's definitely got to be frustrated. You know, as a relegation team, scrapping for any point you can get to tie a game up away from home in the 86th minute and then ultimately losing it, that's not how you survive in this league. But, you know, got to shout out a couple Brentford players. Jordan Henderson still showing his class with that cross. You know, he might get slower, he might get older, but skill stays forever. That cross on the second goal for Brentford was just fantastic. And then, yeah, I got to give a good shout to Igor Thiago. He got a decent doubles there, penalty, and just a striker's goal in the box. Brentford's seen so much turnover in their attackers in recent years, but they are still finding ways to put the ball in the back of the net. Next up on the Saturday Premier League slate was Manchester City hosting Leeds United, and Manchester City coming off a loss in the Champions League in the midweek. And again, just being a team that I really can't get a read on. They're towards the top of the table in the league, but they just have that little bit of inconsistency that's been worrying me. And as for Leeds, well, they're just trying to survive. Manchester City would get this game started out right away. Less than a minute into the game, Bernardo Silva plays a nice 1-2 to Mateus Nunes. Nunes down the right side, crosses the ball into the box. Phil Foden, first time, finished volley in the air right underneath the crossbar. I just hope everyone was sitting down ready for the game. Because if you were trying to watch it, you missed a good goal if you weren't ready. So, yeah, no, crazy. Like, it's always the ones, you know, in the first minute, you know, you're getting composed, starting to take your notes, and then boom, goal. And City were just definitely the more lively team in the first 20 minutes. They had several chances outside of the opening goal, and they were really close to putting it in the back of the net. Several of the chances were by Foden, and they actually did get their second goal. Josko Gvardiol would get the second that City was pushing on for. You know, it was a corner, and they sent him. Leeds United goalkeeper Lucas Perry reached out for it, tried to punch it, kind of punched it right into Nico O'Reilly, and Gvardiol was right there to just tap it in the back of the net. He won't score many goals easier than that one. As the first half went on, Leeds United did get back into the game, just finally having some meaningful possession and creating small chances, but it wouldn't result in anything as the game went into halftime 2-0 in Manchester City's favor. And actually, before you even get into halftime, there was a sequence in the 44th minute where Manchester City put 2 shots on goal that both really could have been goals if it weren't for some key saves and deflections, some good saves by Lucas Perry. I was already ready for halftime, but City kept firing a little bit. And then coming out of halftime, you know, you thought the team that would be getting the goal would be City, and that just wasn't the case. It was Leeds who broke through to start the second half. It was kind of an ugly goal. Manchester City failed to clear. Man City was playing out of the back, and then they made a mistake. Leeds gets the ball. Man City had like 1 or 2 opportunities to clear. The ball just kind of lands right at Calvert-Lewin's feet in the 6-yard box after the 2 City center backs made a mess of it, and from 6 yards out, he's not going to miss. And it made the game a little interesting. And then the game would go from a little interesting to very interesting. Gvardiol, you know, the guy who scored the second goal, stupidly fouled Calvert-Lewin, guy who scored Leeds' goal, in the box. And then Lucas Nmecha stepped up to take Leeds United penalty. It was initially saved by Gianluigi Donnarumma, but the rebound landed right at the feet of Nmecha, and it ended up being an easy tap-in goal. And all of a sudden, after such a one-sided first half, this game was tied 2-2. And as you can imagine, City would push on trying to find a winner. Leeds were holding strong for a while, but it was not meant to be for them. 91st minute, Phil Foden at the top of the box just dribbles on his left foot and put it away in the corner through a sea of legs. Really wasn't seen quickly enough by the Leeds keeper, and it was enough to be the winner for Manchester City. The final in this one, Manchester City 3, Leeds United 2. I said after the midweek game, somebody at Manchester City is going to have to step up when Haaland does not get himself in the score sheet. And Phil Foden did exactly that. 2 wonderful goals on each end of the game. It's exactly what City needed because Leeds spent most of the game doing a good job neutralizing the threat that is Erling Haaland. And I'm not sure if he got a single meaningful chance. But that didn't matter as his teammates stepped up to the plate. He did his job. And as positively as I'm speaking for City, it was actually quite poor they let Leeds back into this match. They had several opportunities to put this game away in the first half, and they almost paid for not getting it done. I don't want to take anything from Leeds, but City really gifted them those 2 goals. First was a defensive lapse where they couldn't clear the ball. They couldn't get it out. And then Garvidal with just a horrible penalty. And it wasn't horrible what he did to Calvert-Lewin. It was horrible how poorly he missed the ball. If they want to be a team that puts pressure on Arsenal in this title fight, winning matches by extremely slim margins like this is not sustainable. It's one thing if you look at the game and say, wow, Leeds did quite a good job today. They were unlucky to lose, but that's not the case. City allowed them to get close. They allowed them to be back into this game, and playing like this will eventually come back to bite them in the ass. The one Premier League game from this weekend that I decided to give some added attention to that didn't involve a team from the quote-unquote top six was Sunderland hosting Bournemouth. Now, this definitely was an obvious choice. I mean, both teams have really impressed so far this season. They're looking incredibly strong relative to, I think, most people's expectations when you hear the two teams' names, and they play entertaining soccer. So I was really excited to watch this one. Both teams with decent chances in the first 5 minutes of this game, and it would be Bournemouth who got us started out, though. A run down the left side by Antoine Semenyo sees his cross land perfectly for the striker, Evan Nilsson, who's right there, right in front of goal, but his first-time finish hits the post, and it was actually Amin Adli who was right there to put the rebound away, and within 7 minutes give Bournemouth a 1-0 lead. And, typically before a game starts, I'll mention whatever American player is playing, but I waited to mention it till now because Tyler freaking Adams in the midfield for Bournemouth in the 15th minute, got the ball by himself with a lot of time in the center circle, and you thought, okay, he might be on for the break. But then he realized that the Sunderland keeper, Robin Roofs, who's had a good season, is way, way, way off his line. Adams then sent in a long shot from nearly halfway across the field to give Bournemouth a 2-0 lead. Probably the best goal I've ever seen scored by an American in the Premier League. Bournemouth had a decent opportunity in the 18th minute to make it 3-0, but ultimately the 9 Sunderland defenders in the box weren't going to let anything go through. Sunderland then won a penalty in the 25th minute. Midfielder Alex Scott for Bournemouth really just makes a silly tackle in the box and it wasn't necessary. VAR took a good long look at it. Nearly 5 minutes later, the left winger for Sunderland, Enzo Lefebvre, stepped up and put away a pretty thumping penalty in pouring rain. And now Sunderland's just down by 1. We go into halftime, second half starts. And it's just a simple pass from Granit Xhaka to Bertrand Traore in the box. He makes just the littlest bit of space with a touch onto his left foot, gets a shot off, found the inside of the near post. Probably shouldn't have beat the Bournemouth keeper, Georgi Petrovic, but it got through, And just like that, Sunderland's tied this game up. And then in the 69th minute, substitute Brian Brobby comes on, and he earns a tough header on a corner. His defender, I believe it was Lewis Cook, just really doesn't put up much of a fight. Lets Brobby just jump by himself, puts his header kind of fading away in the bottom left corner. And despite the fact that Bournemouth had an early 2-goal lead, Sunderland is now winning this game. And as you'd expect, Sunderland had to play defense in the latter part of the game. A shot from James Tavernier, Marcus Tavernier. I don't know why I had it in my notes as James Tavernier. Marcus Tavernier, the Bournemouth central attacking midfielder. He hit a thumper of a shot. It just bounced right in the underside of the crossbar, and unfortunately for Bournemouth, away from goal. Late red card on Lewis Cook was just the cherry on top, no pun intended, for Bournemouth's poor Saturday affair. Final in this one, Sunderland 3, Bournemouth 2. Sunderland have by far been the best story in the Premier League this season. I mean, these guys have everything you want to see in a team, and it's not any tactical anomaly. It's not some revolutionary brand of soccer. It's just heart and grit. These guys, they're fantastic. They get in front of their home crowd, and they give everything they have for over 90 minutes. The crowd gets behind them, and it just works out really well for them so far this year. I mean, yeah, there's individual talent on this team, don't get me wrong. Granit Xhaka is in this career renaissance of his. Brian Brobby has scored some really clutch goals as of late. Enzo Lefebvre has been a treat in the 10 position. And I've been really fond of Nordi Mukulele as their right back. And, you have to give respect to the fact that they maintained their composure in this game. I mean, they went down 2-0 within 15 minutes. A lot of teams in the Premier League can't handle that. They can't come back from that. They took it in stride, realized they had to chip away at the lead, and they did it. It was a fantastic performance by Sunderland. Week in, week out, I've just been continued to be impressed by this team. I mean, I didn't talk about the Arsenal game. The Arsenal game was fantastic. Yeah, it was a 2-2 draw, but that's the best I've seen anyone play Arsenal this season. Well, maybe until a game I talk about in a few minutes. But yeah, overall, just really great stuff. Bournemouth's obviously going to be upset. Anyone who chokes away a 2-goal lead, you just hate to see it. But I'm not going to really get into that. I'm just going to talk about my guy, Tyler Adams. Another shout just scoring an absolute wonder of a goal. I really hope he can keep his good form going into the World Cup next summer. This goal will do a lot for his confidence. Next up was Everton versus Newcastle, just two Premier League mainstays, classic institutions, though I'd say separating fortunes in the last few years. Newcastle's been the much better side compared to Everton, though I am fairly confident in, steps in the right direction for Everton since David Moyes has become the manager again, and I just have been really enjoying the loan signing of Jack Grealish in the last, or this season, even though the last few weeks there's kind of been a little bit of a step below his form when they first came onto the team. This was another game on Saturday that had a quick goal in the first minute. Newcastle got us started out right away. A quick break saw Nick Voltamata set up Anthony Alonga, whose shot was actually blocked by Jordan Pickford. It resulted in a save, but that following corner saw Malik Thiaw's header get the best of any Everton keeper or defender, put it in the far corner, and just like that, Newcastle's up within 60 seconds. Newcastle would double their lead in the 25th minute. A cross from the right from Anthony Alonga was not properly dealt with, and then some short passing in the box. It kind of bounced all over the place. Shots, passes, just Everton could not clear. And then probably the ugliest shot of them all from Lewis Miley from outside the box, just took the right bounce, deflection, and through a sea of legs. There was nothing Jordan Pickford could do for Everton. The goalkeeper just dove and had no chance, and just like that, Everton's up 2-0. Newcastle would get 2 goals on each side at halftime. Nick Voltamata with a lovely chip over Jordan Pickford in the 45th minute before halftime, and then Malik Thiaw in the 58th minute getting his second headed goal of the game. And Everton did get a consolation goal in the 69th minute. Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, actually, it was a decent solo goal. Made a nice touch after a long ball, dribbled past 2 Newcastle defenders, but it was a little bit too late. Final in this one, Everton 1, Newcastle 4. Sometimes when you got 2 Premier League teams who are sitting towards the middle of the table and they're playing each other, sometimes you just get the most one-sided games out of that. One team's just looking heads and shoulders above the other. Now, I know on paper Newcastle is a step above Everton. Don't get me wrong. This is a team that's been in the Champions League 2 of the last 3 seasons. But I thought maybe with Newcastle's domestic struggles this year, Everton's improvement, compound that with the fact that Newcastle had a game in the midweek and Everton didn't, that this one may be a little closer, but that just wasn't the case. Newcastle were by far the better team in this game. I mean, they attacked with just an efficiency, whether it was crossing or build-up play. I thought Nick Voltamata looked especially strong, dangerous going forward. He's a threat in the hold-up play, getting behind the defense. Malik Thiaw is going to be super happy anytime you get a double, 2 headers. He was a sizable threat on those set pieces. And then, just decent rotation from Newcastle. I mean, if you can get a pretty convincing win and you can have Anthony Gordon, Sandro Tonali, and Jacob Ramsey on the bench, I think they're going to be really happy and positive coming out of this. I mean, Everton, I don't really have much on Everton. They couldn't get into the game. They were unimpressive. I mean, the solo goal by Kieran Dewsbury-Hall was nice, but they didn't give me anything to talk about. They were completely dominated, and, it's just one of those ones you move on, forget about it, try to improve, and get a result in the midweek. We're going to quickly talk about the 3 Premier League, or not the few Premier League games we're not able to mention before the last 3 of the weekend, and that was Fulham surprising Tottenham at home, winning 2-1. Just decided to axe that game, didn't get into that one. And then on Sunday, Aston Villa defeated Wolves 1-0. Brighton traveled to Nottingham Forest and picked up the 2-0 victory. And that was it. I don't believe there was a game on the first. No, there wasn't. So we got 3 games left to talk about. They were all on Sunday. The first one on Sunday was Crystal Palace hosting Manchester City. So we're going to get into that one. It was Crystal Palace hosting Manchester United. I was definitely excited for this Palace United matchup. These teams I really had an eye out for this season. I definitely think the appeal of Manchester United is they do seem to be improved compared to the early phases of Ruben Amorim's managership. Not where they were compared to this point last year, but those first early few weeks. And then Palace just continue to be just fun attacking team. They can sell their players. Doesn't matter. Eze's left, Elise's left, Zaha's left. They're still going to score goals and just be a really entertaining side to watch. So let's get into this game. American Chris Richards starting in the defense for Crystal Palace. He's been a really good defender on their side so far this season. United almost added to the list of teams that scored within the first minute. There was just an absolute calamity in the box. It looked like one of those old clips we see where the ball just gets stuck between what seems like 12 legs, but ultimately Dean Henderson, the former Manchester United man and current keeper for Crystal Palace, was able to keep it out of the back of the net. Adam Wharton nearly got his first ever goal for Crystal Palace in the 12th minute. Wonderful strike from the top of the box, but unfortunately it was right at the Manchester United goalkeeper, Sen Lamens. And, kind of a side note tangent that ultimately took from
talking about the game, I just sometimes hate watching a game at Selhurst Park when the sun is setting. It just really makes it hard to watch with the angles. I know sometimes the keepers have to wear hats, and I don't know, Manchester United's white uniforms, with just how bright the setting sun made everything look, it just wasn't fun. It was bothering me most of the game. But in the middle part of the first half, when we get back to the game, I think Crystal Palace were definitely the better of the two teams. They had good efforts, and they were rewarded in the 31st minute when a bit of an interesting situation popped up. Well, first, Jean-Philippe Mateta, their wonderful striker, who I'm a big fan of, was taken down in the box by Lenny Euro. It wasn't much in the tackle, but they're going to call that a penalty every time. You really have to question what Euro was doing. And Jean-Philippe Mateta had to take the penalty twice, which isn't unheard of if there's an infraction by a different player or the keeper. But he scored on the first one, and then VAR is looking at it, and I was really confused, and I didn't realize that the rule had changed, that if the guy who scores creates a double touch, that it has to be retaken if he scored. I guess it's not a big, serious enough of an infraction to where they'll take the penalty away, but he gets another chance. So he scored on the first one. I guess there was an infraction. Was given a second one, scored. And then Crystal Palace are taking the lead into halftime. The second half, though, would be all Manchester United, is in the 54th minute on a free kick routine from seemingly no angle whatsoever. The ball's sent over the top by Bruno Fernandes. Joshua Zirkzee settles it off his chest, and I think many people were in the Crystal Palace defense, and maybe Dean Henderson were expecting it to go across the face of the goal, trying to cross it, but he shot, and it somehow got past Henderson from just no angle whatsoever. I don't know how it scored, and Manchester United tied it up, and then less than 10 minutes later, Manchester United take the lead, which is really surprising considering how poor they were for large stretches of this game. Mason Mount hit a free kick right under the wall from outside the box. You don't see that a lot nowadays. Teams will lay down a guy and be prepared for that, but Palace were not, and they held on to that lead for the rest of the game. The final in this one, Crystal Palace 1, Manchester United 2. An expression that I like personally is a win is a win is a win is a win. You just take the win. Sometimes you don't question how you got the 3 points. You just take them in stride and you move on. I think it was one of those games for Manchester United. They were really poor in the first half. I think they were lucky that Crystal Palace was not able to get more than one goal into the back of the net with some of the chances they had in the box. But Manchester United survived that onslaught. They were only down by one. And then, you get into the second half and, it's a team game. And a lot of times the results will reflect how the team plays, but individual moments, individual brilliance can win games in soccer. We've seen it plenty of times, and that's kind of how Manchester United got these 3 points. Joshua Zirkzee, who I believe is playing better and slowly getting better at Manchester United, just a wonderful shot on that free kick, and then Mason Mount directly from a free kick hitting the rare under the wall free kick goal. I don't think anyone saw that coming. I don't think Dean Henderson looked prepared for that. So, you take that. Sometimes you have to win ugly. I know with Ruben Amorim and the struggles they had last year, they'll take any win they can get whatsoever. I definitely believe Crystal Palace is going to be super upset. They haven't lost much in the Premier League this season, especially not at home. They've been actually really good at home. And it was only their third loss so far, and it just kind of the way they let it crumble in the second half really wasn't the best performance by them. It's tough right now. I'm recording as these Tuesday and Wednesday games are being played, and it's hard to have a take about a team when that's not their most recent result in that competition. For some reason it's so different in Europe. If a team wins in Europe and then they lose 3 league games since then, I'm not thinking about the league games. I'm okay, they just did really well in Europe. But if I'm talking about, Crystal Palace, for example, and I know how they do in the midweek, it really skews my brain, how I look at the current game that I'm talking about against Manchester United. I don't know. It's weird. But again, like I said earlier, it's just so hard to keep up this time of year. So bear with me, people. Next is West Ham hosting Liverpool. I'm not saying this lightly when both teams need every win they can take right now. And the Hammers, it feels like for the millionth year in a row, they've just started so slowly in the Premier League. And obviously Liverpool, they've had their struggles. It's been very well documented in the last few weeks. Hell, I talked about it 30 minutes ago when they had the disappointing result in the Champions League. Alexander Isak starting up front for Liverpool instead of Hugo Ekitike, which frankly surprises me because I just think Ekitike has been in a better run of form this season as a whole. Though, he costs a lot of money. You got to play him. I think one significant positive for Liverpool fans looking at this lineup is seeing Alisson Becker back in the starting lineup. He's been dealing with injury, though they do have a very competent backup goalkeeper. In the first half hour, there were a few chances. Maybe Liverpool should have done better. I don't know. These guys just seem so not with it right now. Simple chances just not being executed. Florian Wirtz had a chance in the 38th minute. Cody Gakpo did well to settle down a long ball. He put it on a platter for Wirtz, and the German international just couldn't put it away.
Liverpool were the better team in the first half, but these guys look lost. Like, it's like they don't know how to convert chances. But then they did. Second half, they did. Alexander Isak finally got his first goal in the Premier League. A long throw in was sent in. It was kind of half cleared. Liverpool maintained possession, and then a cross was sent in, or actually a low cross was sent in. He was right there, kind of to the left of the penalty marker. First time finish, puts it away. Definitely a sigh of relief. I hate to use the words finally, but it's been 13 games for a very expensive striker, so he's definitely going to be glad to get his name in the score sheet for Liverpool. I mean, we're 80 minutes into this game, and I have nothing positive to say about West Ham. The best player on the pitch for them then got a red card, Lucas Paquetá. I mean, technically it was a second yellow, but both were for arguing with the referee, which is just stupid. I think it was his frustration boiling over. You can't have your best player do that. Jared Bowen, though, right after, nearly got a chance to tie it up for West Ham, right? At the 87th minute, he had a shot from the top of the box, tried to go across the face of goal, but it just ended up being a little too far wide. And then Liverpool would wrap this game up in the 92nd minute. Cody Gakpo was sent in a ball from the box. A West Ham defender tried to get his head on it, missed it. Gakpo took it on the chest, first time finish, ended this game. Final score, West Ham 0, Liverpool 2. They've got a lot of work to do, but that had to have been a major sigh of relief, getting 3 points from the London Stadium for Liverpool. I think they're actually quite fortunate because it still wasn't a great game from this team. West Ham were just really bad. West Ham allowed them to have several opportunities to put the ball in the back of the net. Now, yeah, in the first half, Liverpool controlled the tempo of the game. They had the possession, they had the chances, but the finishing was just so poor. And then it wasn't. Alex Isak finally got his first goal. And, I think it's just got to be a sigh of relief to get his name on the sheet. The pressure building up. That stupid statistic that I think the BBC brought a couple years ago when Jadon Sancho had 0 goals, 0 assists, 7 games. I think now there's just in the meme troll world, there's just so much pressure to get these guys who've just recently been signed to get their name on the score sheet. Ultimately, Liverpool's just going to take this one. They're going to run with it. West Ham, again, were incredibly poor. There's literally nothing to write about them positively throughout this game. Their best chance came 87 minutes in, and it wasn't even that great of an opportunity. And just another example in the last few years of West Ham getting absolutely dominated at their new stadium by bigger teams. And, what is Lucas Paquetá doing? I mean, I get, sometimes you get a yellow, sometimes you get a red playing the game. That's just the way it goes. But 2 yellow cards, arguing with the referee. Come on, man. What are we doing? That was just plain stupid. The last game to get our love and attention on this show, well, significant, in-depth love and attention, is Chelsea hosting Arsenal. Both teams coming in this one on the back of pretty impressive Champions League results. Definitely seems like this is the best Chelsea team in a few years. And, it actually might be the best Arsenal team in a few years. So I definitely think there were all the reasons to be excited in this one. The start of this London derby was just incredible. It was so fast-paced. It was physical. It was frenetic. It wasn't technical. It was not a technical game of soccer, but there were, it was physical. Again, it was just chaos. And there were several cards passed out between both teams. Yellow cards were going out like candy on Halloween. And through the first few minutes, Chelsea were the much better team. They used the chaos to their advantage. They were more physical than Arsenal, kind of beating them to second balls, beating them to the first balls. It really just played in their advantage. They used their width really well. Pedro Neto and Estevao on either ends of the wings, really just stretching this game out. And there was a chance in the box for Estevao, I think maybe around the 17th minute. I think he really could have done better. Joao Pedro then had an opportunity in the box early in the first half where I think a better decision could have resulted in a decent goal. But then Chelsea's good start would kind of get nullified by a red card on Moise Caicedo. He'd just been running crazy all game and then ran right into Mikel Merino with a tackle, studs up on the ankle, direct red card. I think it's going to be a direct red card every time. And I think VAR got it right. But then the first half kind of just withered away from that point on. Gabriel Martinelli had a decent chance for Arsenal. It was poor. His shot from the top of the box, I mean, it did actually require a decent save from Robert Sanchez, but I just think it was the sea of legs in between the shot and the goalkeeper. I think it should have been finished better. And we get in the halftime. Second half started. There was a corner kick goal. Oh, but it was not by Arsenal. You would think set piece FC. No. 10-man Chelsea sent in a corner kick near post. Trevor Chalobah gets there. It loops all the way to the back post. Arsenal were more man marking, so there's no one standing on the back post, and Chelsea were up 1-0. Less than 10 minutes later, though, Arsenal would get their tying goal in the 59th minute. Saka danced around the right side, took on Marc Cucurella, got a step on him, cut it to his left, sent in a cross. Mikel Merino keeping up his good form as this makeshift striker for Arsenal, getting another goal. I think he's up to 30 goals and assists in the calendar year of 2025 as of this recording. And this game was tied 1-1.
I mean, and then I thought Arsenal would be confident, man up, 30 minutes left, getting their tying goal. But Chelsea were defending well, still incredibly dangerous on the break. Stamford Bridge felt like a fortress. And yeah, Arsenal really weren't able to get a significant chance for the rest of the game. I mean, in the dying moments, I think this was like their last chance. There was a cross sent in where Jurrien Timber got a head on it with Victor Gyökeres, who was standing right behind him. And I think if Timber hadn't been there and the crashing Gyökeres was allowed to take that header, he probably would have put it in the back of the net. But if and buts, candy and nuts every day be Christmas, something like that. And that's how the game ended. Chelsea won, Arsenal won. I think if you told both sets of fan bases prior to this game that it would finish 1-1 at Stamford Bridge, I think both sets of fans would have been content with it. They'd understood. But I think with how this game played, I think both team fans, everybody's going to walk away from it incredibly disappointed. Chelsea disappointed by the fact that they were the better team today. Through 30 minutes, they were really just giving the game to Arsenal. They were beating them with physicality and width. And I like to avoid hypotheticals. I do. But if Moise Caicedo doesn't get the red card, I think me and just about anyone who watched that game is convinced that Chelsea was going to win. They would have come away with the victory. They were so much better. But their best player had a just lapse of concentration, some immaturity. I mean, it couldn't have been the moment that got into him. But like, what were you doing? You can be physical and you can rough up Arsenal players without getting a red card. And yeah, I think up to that point, he was incredibly lucky to have not even had a yellow card. Arsenal fans will be frustrated because, yeah, a point at Chelsea isn't terrible, but the fact that you spent over 50 minutes of the game up a man and you really only had one or two good opportunities to score, that was incredibly disappointing. And it's one thing that, you're controlling possession and Chelsea sitting back and maybe, quote-unquote, parking the bus, but Chelsea were countering effectively while down a man. And I read this comment, and I have to give it credit because it's not my original opinion, but some people, someone said this, they were talking about who's better, Rice or Caicedo, and turns out the best one's Reece James, because that was just a wonderful display in the midfield by the Chelsea captain today. I feel guilty, but we're going to have to speed run every other league's weekend results because, we're already at 90 minutes here. So we get to the Bundesliga. Leipzig drew Mönchengladbach on Friday 0-0. Bayern Munich with a pretty resounding 3-1 victory over FC St. Pauli. Dortmund and Leverkusen, a good game that I wish I could have given like a little more love to, finished 2-1. And right now the top four in that league is Bayern at the top with a 8-point lead over Leipzig, and then followed in by Dortmund and Leverkusen. If we head over to Spain on the weekend, the results were all right. Now, they did have some midweek games that we're going to talk about in next week's episode, but Real Madrid, disappointing 1-1 draw with Girona. Atletico Madrid got a nice 2-0 victory over Real Oviedo. And then Barcelona with a 3-1 victory over Alaves. I know going into the midweek games, Barcelona were top of the table, but Real Madrid have been playing a lot of games away from home on account of the NFL. They asked because the NFL game that was hosted at the Santiago Bernabeu if they could get like a couple games off. The weekend games in Italy, Como with a nice 2-0 victory over Sassuolo, Juventus with a 2-1 victory over Cagliari, Milan with a 1-0 victory over Lazio, Internazionale Milan traveling to Pisa, getting a 2-0 victory, Atalanta with a 2-0 victory over Fiorentina, and then probably the best on-paper game of the weekend, Roma hosting Napoli at home and losing 1-0. And then a big result out of the French league on the weekend, PSG, who really have looked vulnerable in the French league so far this season, on Saturday losing 1-0 at the Stade Loudois in Monaco. Probably butchered that. Other results, Strasbourg unfortunate to drop 2-1 to Brest. Lyon getting the best of Nantes 3-0, and then Marseille dropping points at home to Toulouse 2-2. I can't get a read on this Marseille team, man. It's like 1 minute you look at the roster, Aubameyang, Greenwood, Højbjerg, and you're like, oh, these guys got potential. They're going to do something in the French league. Then they don't really do anything with it. But yeah, that was last weekend's games. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the MLS Cup. It is setting up for a championship that will be on Saturday, December 6th, between Inter Miami and Vancouver from Inter Miami's current stadium in Fort Lauderdale. It would, to me, be ideal if the MLS didn't have it at one team's home, but I guess that's to give us more importance to the regular season. But yeah, Vancouver traveled to the recently not promoted, but new team San Diego FC in Southern California, pulled off a 3-1 victory, and then Inter Miami at home dominated New York City FC 5-1. I just think the most like exciting storyline is you have probably the guy, even more so than Ronaldo, who's caused Messi the most pain in his career, Thomas Muller, playing for Vancouver. Muller was there when Germany beat Argentina in the World Cup final. Muller was there the time that Bayern beat Barcelona 8-2. I know there were other scenarios where Bayern have gotten the best of Barcelona with Muller on the team. I know there's been other scenarios when Messi went to PSG that Muller got the best of him with Bayern. So this guy has just been a thorn in Messi's side, I think, in big games, probably, his kryptonite. I mean, obviously he's not a defender. He's not someone like Messi would go up against directly. But, I'm excited for that one. I'm going to pay attention to it. That is Saturday, December 6th. And again, thank you for listening. If you've gotten this far, we're like 90 minutes, which is pretty long for me typically. I know, I usually don't try to have them go this long, but sometimes it's just the way she goes. I know this one was a day or two behind, but we're going to hopefully have 2 episodes out next week, an emergency World Cup draw, completely dedicated podcast where I go through like each team, their recent success in the World Cup, and have the teams played and just my opinion on it. That one should be like a nice like 20, 30, 40 minute long video. And then hopefully by Wednesday you will have a video that recaps the midweek Premier League games. That would have been the 14th round of Premier League matchups and the next weekend Premier League games, and then everything else going on from Europe after that. And then I think the week after we have another round of Champions League games. So again, this time of year it is just insanely busy. But yeah, no, if you made it this far, if you made it 95 minutes in the podcast, I want to thank you. I appreciate you. This is Talk Soccer to me, an American fan's perspective on everything going on that he cares about. My name is Jack Alt. We recorded this live from the great city of Baltimore, Maryland. If you like it, please like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Instagram, TikTok, tell your friends about it. And have a good one. Goodbye.